Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, whenever you are. I am Daniel Osorio Tamayo, and I'm going to present you the art in the second industrial revolution. So, let's get started with what was the second industrial revolution. So, the second industrial revolution took place approximately between 1870 and 1940. It began mainly in Europe and the United States. This period was characterized by electricity, steel production, railroads, oil, internal combustion engine, and mass production. Unlike the first industrial revolution that focused on steam and textiles, the gap between like revolutionary inventions or revolutionary technology between the first and the second industrial revolution was like very massive because in the second industrial revolution was the first steps to what is now like massive use of oil for as the largest producer of energy for machines is not nowadays we are seeing that we are seeing like in cars, in I don't know, in transportation media, transportation ways, and like in another or in a large number of things. The oil is the main producer like for energy, but um, this wasn't the only like revolutionary invention from this era. Also, electricity and the cheaper steel production is nowadays we are seeing the things that left this period of time. So, what was the historical and stylistic context? During this time, technology improved communication and transportation. Industry created economic growth, and science advanced quickly. Nevertheless, because of this, workers faced difficult conditions, pollution increased, and many people lived in poverty. This was like the two faces from one coin. We we had seen something like that in Mexico in the uh, Porfirio Diaz president era. We had seen like he put all his effort to become Mexico like in a industrial industrial in an industrial power across the world. So like it put like all the money, all his effort to that, and he achieved it. He bring like a lot of things, a lot of technology from Europe, from United States to Mexico, but the there was a lot of inequality. Poverty increased, and the richer only became more richer. So because of this, also, cities grew rapidly, factories expanded, and people lives changes dramatically. But because of these changes, artists started to see the world like differently. Many artists reacted to urbanization, modern life, social inequality, and technological progress. Art became more experimental and modern. So, what was the influence of industrialization on art? Thanks to industrialization, artists had access to new paints, portable material, and photography, giving them new tools to create their art. Besides that, transportation allowed artists to travel more easily, and artists now were not focusing only on religion or mythology that were like back in the days. And instead of that, they represented workers, street trains, factories, and everyday people. Like in all the movements, artists began to paint to recreate the things that they were seeing. But now, with a more industrial world, they they started to paint like these this urban ecosystem. So, what were the artist movements in this period of time? The most important artist movements during this period included Impressionism, Post-Impressionism, Art Nouveau, and architecture style. So we have to start with Impressionism, that is like the most famous one. Well, the second most famous because when we will see. So Impressionist artists wanted to capture light movements, everyday life, instead of perfect details. Monet, that was the most famous artist of this movement, focused on the sensation of the moment. This reflected the fast and changing world of industrial society. And also this movement was like very criticized by the elite of artists, like the art critics, because of like the loose brushstrokes that it takes to do this type of paintings. Because like the painting is it wasn't like defined of its soft textures and changing light effect. It was very criticized for this because from like in the opinion of critics, this was like a bad painting. This was with zero technique, with the things that we have seen like in Renaissance or something like that. To this, it was like a child is painting now. So the impressionist artists began to make like their own reunion, their own presentations, and they were growing like in their group of people. But besides of all the critics, all the criticisms that they have to take, um, the impressionism is like one of the most popular movements in the world. So after that, it was the post-impressionism, that this is like I think the most popular movement of this era, because we have in this movement like the most famous artist, one of the most famous artists in the world, and the most famous artist in this movement, clearly, obviously. So this artist is Vincent van Gogh, with his painting like the most famous painting was the Starry Night. Like is the first one that appears in this image. And also, like the most famous artist in this movement is Paul Gauguin, Paul Cézanne, and Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec. This movement was characterized by on how artists becoming like more individual and emotional, because impressionism focused in like the paintings were something of the artists were surrounded, like a train station, a lake that I show a painting of a lake from Monet, and they were showing like the nature, the world that they surrounded. But in post impressionism, they also like paint the world that they were surrounded, but it began to start like a more individual vision of the world. So we started to see like how each one of these artists has the view of the world where they were surrounded. So this movement showed how art was becoming more individual and emotional during this modern industrial society. So the next movement is Art Nouveau. This movement appeared in the end of the 19th century, and its main characteristics was decorative lines, natural forms, flowers, and elegant curves. Artists wanted to combine art with modern life and design, and they are reflected in industrial progress because new materials and printing techniques made mass production possible. The main artist is Arthur Heygate, McMurdo, Henry de Toulouse-Lautrec again, and Gustav Klimt and Anthony Gaudí. This movement was characterized for the uses of glass, of steel. Like they were using more things to paint besides paint. So this was like very revolutionary for this period of time, and this showed how was becoming more and more experimental. So one most like the last thing that I want to show you from like the moments of this era is the architecture in steel. Like one of the most famous architecture pieces like exist in the world, that is the Eiffel Tower, was was built in this period of time, precisely in 1889. So the Eiffel Tower was initially intended to stand for only 20 years, designed by engineer Gustave Eiffel's team to celebrate the French Revolution centennial. The Iron Giant was original despised by artists, but survived demolition by proving vital as a military radio antenna. Like I don't think that any person who are like who have like the least knowledge of the world can know the Eiffel Tower. So this is like a reflect of how in the second industrial era, the steel was more cheaper. Like it was like more easy to use. So in this piece of art, we now see like this mass production and these cheaper materials, and yes. So this is the end, and we have my conclusion. I think that this period was very important for the art development, and it changed a lot of the view that artists had. But it also introduces one of the most important things, that is photography, that will change dramatically how artists felt with their vision. Photography was like a point of inflection in the artist world, because now that you had some tool to reflect like how the world is, like uh, the artist want to reflect in their paintings how they view the world, but now you have a tool that makes that like a photo. Is now where what are we doing, what are we doing since we have that? So painters, artists became more and more and more and more and more experimental, and the avant-garde was like growing, and the movements started to do like to be in least time. Like the world is changing, and the artists become more and more experimental. Like they wanted to do more and more and more and more and more and more. And they in the second industrial revolution was like the first step for that. So another thing that I also believe is industrialization had both positive and negative effects. Technology improved society, but it also created social inequality and difficult working conditions. Because of this, art became a way to reflect both progress and human problems. And nevertheless, many artistic ideas from this period still influence contemporary art today. So that was it. Thank you for seeing all this video. I wanted to know how you feel with this new information, and that's it. I am Alan Daniel Osorio Tamayo, and see you next time.